Let's talk about biochar. This here is a retort that I built several years ago and never quite finished. We had it to the point where it was ready to go and just wound up falling back on our old equipment and using our old stuff. All right, so our old retort has really had it. It's been used so much that the metal on it has degraded and it's just coming apart. So I could rebuild that one, but I had this equipment laying around. This was scrounged. That is an old tank, actually. And where you see the white skirting on there, that's where it's cut. And that thing hanging off the back is classified. I can't tell you what that is. But there's a handle on the front and you can lift it up. And then the inner barrel, let me turn this around so you can see it. The inner barrel on that is just a 50-gallon barrel, like that one right there. That one's got paint on it, so it hasn't been in there yet. So we tried this out yesterday, and it worked really well. I was really surprised how well it worked for the first time. Usually you got to tweak them a little bit. And it's burning right now. We started off at 1 o'clock and it's 5 something now. And this particular design of biochar maker is a light it and forget it. All right, so once it's lit, you just walk away, and when it is out of material in the inner retort, it stops gassing off and it just shuts itself down. And then you just let it sit. The whole thing cools down. You come out, and we came out this morning. There was beautiful biochar, right? Just beautiful stuff. So a little added fun here. There's a hole in the bottom of this. It was a threaded boss for the last assembly, and gas was leaking out all the way around this. And so the kids shoved a piece of conduit in there, and then the gas is coming out over here, and they just light it off and let it burn. And you can see there's eggshells out here. They brought a frying pan out and I had to fry some eggs on wood gas. But that wood gas right there has a lot of potential, and I want to develop that here. I want to find out what I can do with that. I do know of certain things you can do with it. You can obviously fry an egg on it, right? Just put a frying pan on top of there and you're in business. But I want to find out more about that, whether or not I can compress it and hold it in some sort of vessel for use later on. I'm pretty sure I can, but I'm going to check with some experts. But this isn't by any means complete. You can see there's some insulation hanging out the bottom. That is the refractory, is what it's called. And when the burn starts, it turns all of the heat away from the refractory, so it turns it in. And then there's a barrel like this that's full of wood on the inside, and the wood that's in there roasts. It doesn't burn, it roasts. All right, so no flame contacts it. And to be perfectly candid about biochar, the definition of biochar is organic material that is gassed off, is one of the terms they used, or pyrolysis is another term they use, but it needs to be done in an oxygen-free environment. If you have an oxygenated environment, then you're just going to have a burn, right? It's just going to burn on you. So this design works quite well. My last one, it was really hard to load. It was super heavy. You had to have a front end loader to load it. I had to dig a pit to have it down in so that I could lift it high enough to do it. And we had to weld chains to it, and they were weakening with time, so it was kind of a dangerous setup. This one's really easy. I'll show this to you once it's done burning. It flips up, and then the barrel just sits in there, and we can actually load the barrel while it's in there. And to get the barrel out after the burn is done, the biochar is pretty light. What I liked about the way this worked this time was the efficiency. Okay, so the barrel, 50-gallon barrel, we filled it with as much wood as we could fit in it. You have to be a little cautious. You can't pack it in there like sawdust. You couldn't pack them because there has to be gaps. All right, so we packed it with smaller pieces of wood, blocks, you know, maybe 4x4 blocks, and the wood has to be dry. The drier, the better. And what we got this morning when we checked this, that barrel was still 2/3 full, so up to the second ring of pure biochar. And it was really good quality stuff too. I plan this week to talk about soils on our show. I'm going to start off Monday night talking about soils, the life of the soils, and some of the things that we figured out that really enhances the life of the soils. And probably the biggest thing that we've come across is biochar. And if it is made properly, and it's the real thing, if it's really biochar, it works really well in soils. And I'm going to go into that on the show tomorrow night. For those of you that don't know about the show, we go on every night on YouTube at the Anyone Can Farm Experience. Okay, you got to have the Anyone Can Farm Experience. We go on at 8 o'clock Eastern, and I just talk about stuff that interests me for a couple of nights, and then we'll talk about stuff that interests you guys. We'll do question and answer on Wednesday nights. And here we are going into spring. Doesn't really feel like it, but the weatherman says we're going to be going into spring. And this is kind of a critical spring, I think. More so than last spring. So a lot of people are taking seriously their gardening efforts and small-time livestock production. And in my opinion, everything starts with the soil. And one of the things we've discovered along the way, actually, I got the idea out of a Mother Earth News magazine 15 years ago, and developed it year after year after year. At one time, we thought we would be big-time biochar makers and just, you know, sell it by the bag. But it's far more valuable to use it on my farm than to sell it. We're gonna sell it because we can make a lot more than we really need. A few of the components that we use is the retort, and I'm gonna have another one of those. I've got another vessel just like that we're gonna modify to work like that one. Let me turn it around, and I'll maybe give you an idea of what's happening here. It's not much to see, except there's a lot of heat coming out the top. And you can't even really see it except for the waves. There's no smoke. It burns extremely clean. The only thing that's left over is just pure charcoal when we finish. And I'll show it to you when we open it up. And that won't be until tomorrow morning. But it's just pure charcoal. There is nothing in it. You cannot smell anything. You cannot taste anything. This is the gas, the wood gas that's coming off. All right, you see the flame has gone out. That's the wood gas. And it smells pretty bad, actually. So instead of just stinking the place up, I'm just going to touch it off. We're not going to use it. It really stinks. And it'll burn like that for 5 hours. That is the gas that's extra to the burn. A lot of the gas is I'd have to show you how this is on the inside, but it's coming up around the inside and aiding in the combustion around there. And like I said, what's nice about this one is once it's done, it just shuts itself off. We don't have to watch it. It can't run away on you. What I mean by that is some of the designs that I've seen that I stayed away from, they bring in an alternate fuel from the outside, like a propane or an electric, and you have to monitor it constantly or put electronic devices on it that will monitor it and shut doors down and stuff. This one is light it and walk away. So long as it's in a good area like this, you don't have a problem. But then your source of wood is always an issue. Like you have to be able to, I have that truck and there's a mill up the road and they sell me truckloads of wood for $100. And then you have to process the biochar once it comes out. This is a 1928 feed grinder. It's in pieces right now because we're modifying it. You can see this one is designed to run off of a belt, and our 1946 tractor does run it, but the belt slides off and it loosens up, and it's a pain. So we got a PTO shaft coming that'll just hook to the back of our modern tractor. We were going to try and adapt this one up, but it was easier to buy one that was brand new that would hook right on for $75. This is a cyclone, is what it's called. And when this is running, it's got a hammer mill right below this chute. There's a hammer mill. And then this device on the side is a pump, an air pump. So when it's up to speed, it's really drawing stuff in, hammering it into dust. It pulverizes it, and then it blows it up this air pump, and it will go up a chute, and then once it goes into this cyclone, which will be mounted up there, you can see it was mounted up there, but one of the cows knocked it off. It made a good place to go itch. The cyclone slows it down so that you don't have a huge dust cloud. Yeah, so this is a really good device. It's pretty old. I'll show you what the wood supply looks like. I went and got some the other day. Those are just cut-offs from a place that makes pallets, and they sell them to me cheap. When I go up there with a 10-yard truck like this, they're real happy to see me because I get it out of their way. And they've got a lot up there. So I'm going to be making a lot of biochar. We actually burn this in the house too for wood. Haven't this year, just haven't. Been just kind of too busy to get up there and get it. But I'm going to run up tomorrow and get a big load and start getting it dried. This stuff is a little on the wet side, but once we let it sit in the sun under a black tarp, the solar effect will dry it out in no time. So what we got out of this burn today was 46.5 pounds. And the inner barrel did not seem to be affected by the burn heat at all. Our last retort was really hard on the inner barrels. And the inner barrel that we were using was old fuel tanks, sort of like that fuel tank right there, the red one. Actually, exactly like that. And we would have to go around the countryside, try and find them, and then try and talk people out of them. If they had gasoline in them, then it was a little on the treacherous side when we would have to cut the legs off and eventually cut one end out of it. So we do that with an oxygen acetylene torch, and you know, even if it's a really old tank, still you can have problems. I never have personally, but you can. So I don't want anybody trying that. Don't go cutting on any fuel tanks. If it's diesel, it's not near as bad. Gasoline, be careful when you're cutting into those tanks. Yeah, so that's it. I'm pretty excited about this. I'm pretty excited to start talking about soils and getting ready for our spring garden operation. It's really going to be a lot of fun. I mean, I hope people are starting to feel a little sense of urgency about it. You know, if you getting worried about the food supply like everybody's talking about, break the spell, grow some food. All right, hey, this is Mark coming to you from Baker's Green Acres. Real quick, I wanted to follow up on my last video where we talked about biochar, and I'm right down by the retort here. This is the Generation 5 retort, and we've had 3 successful burns with it so far. This is a barrel full of really nice char, really good stuff, just beautiful stuff. You know, it breaks nice and easy. It's completely evacuated of anything except the carbon. And this is what it looks like before we burn it. Okay, so this is empty, right? And then that barrel right there would be full of wood blocks, hardwood blocks, and then it's put in here upside down, so the open side is down. And then we put a little bit of kindling wood around it and get it started with the top down. And this this girdle around here made out of roofing steel has refractory on the inside. Refractory is an insulation that can take a lot of heat. And so this thing is really cooking. I'm not exactly sure of the temperature of it because my temperature gauge just goes to error as soon as I put it on it. So it's very, very hot. I know it's below 1,000 degrees, but I can put my hand on the outside of this and it's warm to the touch, but it doesn't burn me. That's what that refractory does. It turns all the heat inside. And then the blocks, the wood blocks that are inside the barrel get roasted and they gas off. They let off their distillates, they call them. So all the things in the wood that makes up wood just turns to gas and comes off. It comes out the bottom and it burns. And you have the process of what's called pyrolysis, and it burns off everything. But we've got something kind of interesting here that I wanted to show you. You can biochar a lot of things. You can turn a lot of things into biochar. So wood, anything that's carbon based. So the guys that are operating this right now are 2 guys. One of them's 10 and one of them's 12. And so they ask me, do you think we could biochar blank? And I will say to them, give it a try, see what happens. So they had a cow head. It was basically a skull, still had the teeth in it, the bottom jaw, and the horns on it. It was pretty fresh. I mean, we just butchered it this winter, and the dogs had at it for a while until they got tired of it. And the boys said, well, we're going to biochar that, and I want to show you what it looks like after it's been biochared. So this is the skull right here. And you can see the eye socket right there. This would have been there like that. That's the eye socket. These are from hoofs. This is the shin bone, actually. And you can see that's completely charred through. And one of the things you'll notice about this is how fine the grains are in that, you know, but it is brittle. I can break it, but it's very, very fine grained. So that's good because you have a lot of cross-sectional area in there. If you were to look at this under a microscope or even under a magnifying glass, it looks like a honeycomb. It's real porous. So everything that was in there that wasn't carbon has come out. So this does not smell like burnt bone right now. Honestly, I do not detect an odor at all. Nothing. Okay, so what else do we have here? What do you think that is? Well, better yet, what do you think that is? It's not a cow tooth. That is the cow's horn. But the shell that goes on the horn is gone. It's just gone. So this is what's left inside of it. And this, I'll just do it with this one because that one I want to save for an example. But you can see it's really brittle. It's just carbon now. All right. So it's kind of a neat thing. And this, if I were to pick down through this, there's a bullet that should be in here someplace. I was waiting to see if I could find it real time for you. I shot this cow with a 22. I'm not seeing the bullet though. But the bullet was, you know, it was a jacketed bullet, so I would think we would see the jacket in here, but I don't see it. Maybe I'll have to look. But that's what happens. Anything that's carbon-based, we can cook everything out of it except the carbon, and you're left with, this would be, they would call this bone char, you know. So an outfit like ours, we do, you know, we do a lot of butchering here. So usually what I'll do when we have bones that we just don't need that to make that much bone broth, you know, and we don't have room for it in the freezer, and let's say that we just, you know, got to move it along, we'll put it over with the chickens for a while, let them have at it. They'll pick everything off of it that it would take us a great amount of time to get it off there. And the chickens got to have, they got to have protein too. Let's see, make this better. And then we'll take it out of there and let the dogs have at it for a while because, you know, they like to chew bones. And when they're scattered around the yard long enough and I get tired of them, then they'll go in here and we'll turn them into char. And then that char will go wherever. You know, it could go in the compost pile, could go to the gardens. It can actually be fed back to the animals. And I'm going to talk about that tonight, how we're applying biochar on this homestead and how it can be applied, you know, on other homesteads. And I'm going to share about this tonight on the Anyone Can Farm live chat tribe meetup. It's at 8 o'clock. All right, so cut me off there for a minute. I'll move up closer to the house. So it's coming up here, and we're going to talk more about biochar and the way that we can apply it on the homestead. I would say it's one of the better components if you want to stack the deck on your homestead as far as getting things moving quick. Fertility of the animals, fertility of, or the health of the animals, fertility of the soil. And those two things go hand in hand. So if you can get the soil up to speed, even if you've got bad soils, you can regenerate them to make new, nice soils, nice new, you know, fertile soils. Okay, having a moment there. But please join us tonight. That's coming up here pretty quick. You got to put in the Anyone Can Farm experience, the Anyone Can Farm experience YouTube channel. Okay, 8 o'clock Eastern Standard. Remember, anyone can farm.